That's why I said we have to talk about creative baton change. Where people are trained, mentored directly or indirectly. Yeah.
Wow.
And one thing that Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and Freddie Hammond, they're not scared of bringing in people in to watch them, because they're interested in to expand.
Affinity Extra, be extra.
Kick things off for everyone, yeah, because I want to just explain what optimistic means to me and what Sounds of Blackness means to me, and then we're going to go straight into you, and you're going to hit us with the stats, with the information and all that stuff that we need to hear about Sounds of Blackness and what really was the engine behind Sounds of Blackness. Now, I was a 16-year-old and I said this numerous times in the past, if you haven't heard me, I'll say this again. The weird thing is that I never started into music because of church. Yeah, ironically enough, I went to my cousin's house, who wasn't a Christian, and he had this vinyl, and this vinyl was a gospel choir called Sounds of Blackness, and it was optimistic, and the B-side was Testify, and he was playing it on vinyl, and he was showing me how to sample. And I just loved it, and I went on from there, and I became, who Roger is today still, yeah, from Sounds of Blackness, and my cousin, who wasn't a Christian, played me that tune. Now, again, I have major influences, Andre Crouch, all them things, which is fantastic, but I must say, the one that really, the group that actually pushed me into music as such was actually Sounds of Blackness. I bought every single. What made it was so proud for me as a young man was being able to go into HMV and go and buy their singles, and their singles also had remixes that were dance, you know what I'm saying? You had Frankie Knuckles on there, you had top dance DJs, and when I went to St. Kitts, they were top of the dance charts. You know what I'm saying? Not gospel charts or CCM. They were top of the dance charts, which was massive then. You seen they were ramping with the likes of the Brat with Funkified, I remember at the time, and and all them top guys there. Sorry guys, I don't want to make it sound like I just listen to hear me. But you have to salute that, for me, Sounds of Blackness, they represented who they are. The first actual gospel group from America that I ever saw live, was Sounds of Blackness, and it was a sheer excellence. Now everybody laughs at me because they all talk about, I watched Fred, I saw Commission when I was 8 years old. Sorry, I waited till I was 17 years old before I got to see Sounds of Blackness, but what an experience. And I'm excited to actually hear about Sounds of Blackness, because sometimes we in the Christian world are very sterile. Starting with myself, we don't work with certain producers because they're not jumping up on the stage and they're not from my church. Now, Sounds of Blackness wasn't like that. You know what I'm saying? They worked with producers outside of that circle. Now, Brother Kevin will bring us into how they transcended into certain circles, and because these models are there, but our choirs today are struggling to understand how to transfer the success outside. It's not by changing lyrics, it's maybe about techniques and who you're working with. Anyway, Kevin, let's go to it. So I'm getting so excited because Sounds of Blackness means a lot to me, and I wear my Black Panther t-shirt and everything like that still, because we hear about Sounds of Blackness and everything like that. So what kind of forever, man? What kind of forever? But listen, bro, talk to me, bro. Before everything started, before Sounds of Blackness, where does it come from, bro? Where did it come from?
Well, it is the part of the Minneapolis sound, according to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, and Prince and so forth. That beehive of creativity, and the sound engineer behind it was a gentleman by the name of Steve Hodges, who started his creative development as a sound engineer at a black label on the West Coast called Solar Records. And
Solar Records, I heard of it. Yeah.
Yes. Second time around, he did the sound engineering and that, and On the Beat Goes On, etc., etc. But when he went to Minneapolis, at the invitation of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, when they created Fly Time Studio, which became a great beehive of creative activity, What made them successful, they actually break Janet Jackson on the international scene with Control. This is the first album here. So we're just talking about the, where,
right.
you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Man, we see it. Yeah, man.
Which produced about several million seller singles and number one. So it was revolutionary.
Okay, go on.
Then you have Alexander O'Neill with Criticize, which was a number one single, and it became a big seller in the UK with a million seller. And also this one as well, his first one. Okay.
Cool.
So I, when I'm talking about the different sound production, I always have an album, to show. This was the Jimmy Jam's first album that they produced that was a multi-million seller. It sold 6 million copies for Janet Jackson first time around, and it's 40 years old. So let's move forward.
Wow.
Before Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis became big, explosive, they had the mentorship, just the word, the mentorship and guidance of Clarence Avant, who is the black godfather of music, the mastermind, the power broker who created the deals, the negotiation. Yes, you got to understand that because it's vitally important. And I treat, if Linton Bettel was around, I treat him as that. You see, the guys know the industry and know the contracts and know the loopholes and tell people to avoid certain things. And when Clarence Avant talked to any white chief executive, they jump, bro. They literally jump.
Right. Knows his things.
So he actually orchestrated the deal for because of the success of Control and Rhythm Nation, Rhythm Nation as well. Because of the success of those two albums, and also when they produced the hit record for Herb Albert, the co-owner of A&M Records, Diamond is the best friend. They actually was given a label. They were actually funded it. A&M Records actually underwrite for them a label of their own, which Sound of Blackness came out of. Sound of Blackness came out of a black-owned label. Aha.
Right.
Did you know that?
Listen,
Did you know
need to
that?
own our things, man. We need to own our things. Go. Okay.
So listen to this now. Sound of Blackness first album we're talking about 91. 1991 was released 91, called The Evolution of Gospel, which has Optimistic. And Optimistic actually was a number one dance track in the US on Billboard. So it was a monster house. You know what I like about this track? It has the percussion techniques. It's flawless. It's revolutionary. You ever listen to it, and the bouncing and the thickness of it.
Yeah.
Brilliantly recorded and totally original. There was no dance single or recording out at the time that could match that. It was a runaway. I was in America at the time. It was a runaway hit. Runaway.
Serious.
The group actually received about 3 Grammys during and also Sound of Blackness as a music ensemble or group rather. They are 50 years old. Yes.
Okay. 50 years old.
Yes. Those guys been around. They're seasoned industry men. Just seasoned. Hines and 50 years old. And it took Jimmy and Jam. Actually, they're one of Jimmy Jam's most favorite groups. With Optimistic, what a powerful track. Talking about struggle and that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin. Would you say that it almost encompassed? It made a Negro spiritual kind of sounding choir. Yeah. It actually made them kind of how can I say relatable to everybody. You know what I'm saying? You can play that track to this very day. You You know what I'm saying? At a family reunion, a family gathering, a DJ will play their tracks, whether they're Christian or non-Christian. It's just it has struggle, but it's not. But there's a positivity to it that lifts you up, and it's not bashing you on the head about God this, God that, God that, but it's just saying to stay optimistic, and the vibe and the sound of it, you just have to dance and just be happy, and if you want to bring positive vibes in the place, this track was the track.
Well, okay, if we look at as far back as the 70s with New York Gospel Community Choir, they did the same thing. They did the same thing with their optimistic tracks, which cross over into disco and was in top of the charts, you know.
Okay.
Mighty Clouds of Joy did the same thing with Mighty High, which went #1 on the dance charts, you know. So there was, I have a lot of things to tell you about gospel in particular, going back.
This is crazy. This is beautiful, man. This is crazy.
Yeah, because you got the East Coast sound, you got the West Coast sound according to the Hawkins and Andrew Crouch and so forth, and then in the middle you got Minneapolis sound, you know, according to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.
Wow.
And matter of fact, don't forget, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis also produced a platinum album for Orlando Adams as well. Platinum gospel album. Yeah.
Is that right? Orlando Adams. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
She had 2 albums with them, 1 gold and 1 platinum. Yeah. During the 90s. You know, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis they were prolific and quite impacting to the industry. They actually, matter of fact, they were so influential that Freddie Hammond actually went to visit their studio to just watch them production. He was mesmerized. Yes. Mm-hmm. So he started to build his creative model off these guys. And matter of fact, I forgot the name now. Sounds of Blackness actually did some tracks and a platinum soundtrack for Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis too, you know. Yes, they had some of their tracks.
Yeah, because that's something which I feel that, you know, in America, where they had advantage over the UK industry, especially gospel industry, is that the US was doing a number of films, especially in the 80s and 90s, especially 90s. I remember my early years, in the early 90s, there's a lot of black films that they always had to, no matter how many hip hop tracks, no many R&B tracks they had to reach out to a choir to do, and Sounds of Blackness was the choir to do. Joy, Soul Holiday, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? They'll be picking out tracks from Sounds of Blackness because they were church tracks, but were relatable.
Yeah, the thing about it with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, they understand the old development and the psychology of music. They understand it, and how they were multi-instrumentalists. They had a brilliant sound engineer by Stephen Oddish, who actually worked with them for 17 years. So he understands the work procedures and the work ethic. So he knew them. He knew how they think, back to front. So, and the thing about you need to remember about Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, they did not repeat their sound. Each artist was tailor-made. Tailor-made.
Crazy.
That's the brilliance of these guys. That's why I said, Sound of Blackness, to reach to the level of success, when they came together with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, then it just let loose. And remember, the black label that they worked on, that they were contracted to, was called Perspective. The title of the label title is interesting, Perspective. And at the peak of their gross earning, Perspective, they did about 10 million.
Okay.
Around 94. Matter of fact, what is interesting as well, during the 90s in particular, including the productions or soundtrack production they did about 2 or 3 soundtracks which were platinum. The black creators, in terms of LA Babyface and so on, and Teddy Riley and so forth, and the other black creators in particular, did about over 30 gold certifications and platinum certification. There was 30 black soundtracks from black labels and so forth, that there was over 30 of them. So the 90s was the golden era of black soundtracks.
Wow.
You know, in the hood, etc.
Yeah.
You know,
that's amazing. That's amazing. That's truly amazing. So you got these producers now. I'll be interested. I don't know if you know any stories of how did Sounds of Blackness get connected to Jimmy Jams. Did these guys go selecting them, or did they select them? What, do you know if anything about that process?
So the thing about it is that unfortunately, what we need to do is actually revisit it in part 2, because you can't really summarize it.
Ooh.
No, because you have to talk about the process of Sound of Blackness before Jimmy Jam, who were the creative engine. You had Hannah and so forth. You know, the singers. You know,
okay, right then, bro. Let's hit off. Let's get to it. Where did Sounds of Blackness go? Do you want to start talking that story of Sounds of Blackness 50 years ago? Where did it all start? What church was it in? Was it in church?
The only thing is that it has to be talked about in the next
part
program. And I tell you what,
go.
I don't waffle things. I always make sure that my facts are rich and quantified.
All right. You hear it first, people. Hear it first.
When it comes to music history, you can't rush it, I'm afraid. It's because it has several different technicals and impact. Does that make sense?
No. That makes sense. No. That makes total sense, and I think that's fantastic, because I think that sometimes, like he says, people come up with stories, and these stories go out, and it's not actual true fact. So going back to Jimmy Jams, now we're talking about these guys now and the sound behind Sounds of Blackness. Now, one unique thing I saw about Sounds of Blackness was the ability to have a true sounding track, an album track, but they understood the power of remixing, which I've never really seen before or even after. Yeah, it's very rare you see gospel groups really truly get their head around the remix market. Now, at the time in the 90s, it was crucial that you had singles, but with the singles you had 4 or 5 different remixes. Now, Sounds of Blackness understood that and the roll with it. Now, the whole single market and remixes, was that just the culture of the time, or would you say that is just down to relationships?
Well, there was the sample culture where a lot of the new producers in particular was visiting the early stuff from the previous recording pioneers like Curtis Mayfield, etc. And they were taking it and actually doing their interpretation of it. And so it actually evolved, because a lot of people don't realize that mixing and remixing in itself is technical. You have to be technical, because there's sounds and levels and how to capture certain instruments and individualize them, you see? Yes, so it depends on the engineer that you actually work with. Now, as I said before, Steve Rogers was one of the top 5 best sound engineers in the country. You know? So they was able to work with some. So Steve Rogers, would he work with all the single mixes and remixes? It's quite possibly, yes. It's quite possible, because and sometime Jimmy Jam might bring in some of his other key brethren from time. Prince group, former Prince group. So remember, it's a collection of musicians from Minneapolis and so on that they work with. It was a core musicians, just like Philly had a core musician that was part of the fraternity. Also, Minneapolis had some core musician that was part of the Minneapolis sound.
You mentioned Prince there, bro, because it's the first time you mentioned Prince. So Prince is a Minneapolis artist coming through ranks, and he is not only artist, he's a musician as well.
He's one of the originator. And matter of fact, before Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis actually went out on their own, they were actually sacked, so to speak, by Prince. So Prince let them go.
Wow.
That they, matter Matter of fact, their first major production was the SOS band. Yeah, during the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Me personally, I wasn't really a Prince fan, but Prince seems to have a massive fan base out there, and I didn't realize how big he was, and you know what I mean, how big he is.
Well, you've got to understand that Prince was a multi-instrumentalist. He played the bass much better than his bass player. He was at that level.
Wow.
Prince is a one-off creative entity. And that's why Stevie Wonder and Quincy Jones and them were highly gutted when he died. Because if you understand him sonically, Prince is at a different level in terms of production. When you listen to Purple Rain and when you listen to the other recordings that he did, they were absolutely original. He was difficult to copy. He was a masterpiece, right?
So you're coming out, and this is real important that, you know, you're coming from a whether it's choirs, producers, you have a sound which is influenced by greats in your city, and sometimes we have bands that come out of our city and it has a massive influence and raises the levels and give hope. And you can imagine you got groups in Minneapolis going, oh, we can't get out there because, I mean, when you see success stories like Prince, because Prince, for me, I heard more about Prince from my white friends than I hear from my black friends. You know what I mean? You know. And
Prince was a global icon. He was a crossover success. He was just one off. Actually, you got to remember, his Purple Rain album, soundtrack album, did about close to 16, 17 million in the States alone. Jeez. That's a soundtrack album. Hey, look, during the 80s in particular, and right into the 90s, the music that was coming out from our black brothers and sisters, you know, Fred Hammonds and so forth, it was revolutionary because you have Kurt Franklin on Gospel Eccentric doing their thing, and then you have Perspective Records, black owned, doing their thing. Woo! You know, the West Coast, you know, which Kurt Franklin is from. Then you have Minneapolis, which, you know, creating a sound of its own. And remember also that on that same label, you had Mint's Condition.
Ooh, you joking?
Yes, Mint's Condition was produced by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, bro. So when you talk about Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, they are at the present time the most longest running black production team in history with 40 years of production. 40 solid years of production. And their music does not repeat itself. They're absolutely original. Yes.
That's what I'm saying. And the number of the guys that they sound like they've been working with are absolutely classic.
The numbers that Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis produce with Sound of Blackness and Mint Condition and Janet Jackson, Alexander album also came out at the black label as well. Taboo. Distributed by CBS Records. That was Clarence Abbott label, and he was, as I said, the godfather of Black Godfather, rated by Quincy Jones and everybody, a serious icon.
So you know, with so we're looking at this and we're looking at the foundations of what's going on there, and I think I want to come to more the application element as we come into the end of this part here, and we were looking at the scene that Sounds of Blackness was coming from. But when you're looking at the scene and I'm thinking, how can we learn in the UK from these guys? And I'm looking, bro, and one thing I can learn, and something I said to my colleagues, is ownership. Yeah, and if we have ownership, we will be free to excel in what we do. Yeah, and I have to say to artists, let's own our sound. Yeah, let them come to our table. Let's not beg off the table. And we've continually done that, is beg off the table of the Christian labels, of non-Christian media, and we've continued want to be part of their networks, not realizing if we had ownership. And the key thing is that I've learned this week is that in the UK and the US, in the Christian world, we do not we do not praise, I mentioned this to you the other day on the phone, praise our executives, the guys that are high up who are making maneuvers in the unseen world. So like it's all about the artists in the UK. Everything's about the artists. But Quincy Jones and all these guys, these LA Reeds, all these guys, you hear about all the time, but they never go on the stage and sing. But these guys are the power brokers. These guys are the ones who direct the sound. Movers and shakers of the world. You know what I'm saying? And these guys are well known. And I remember when Kevin Bond came over here.
Yes, he's another one.
Yeah, I'm saying. So these guys are movers and shakers, which we do not celebrate in the UK, and we don't push up. And I'm not saying we're meant to be pushing up people's names and whatsoever, but the reality show is that we fail to realize where we can move this thing forward. We can move this forward with backing, financially supporting our execs to walk into rooms and say, can you stop mugging off our people? This is our sound, these are our numbers, and we're going to stand strong by it, And that's what I'm kind of learning out here. Because, bro, we've talked about Motown. We haven't even got no detail into Motown. We moved up to Philly, you know what I'm saying? And I never even knew a Philly thing was going on. Then we gone to Minneapolis. And, bro, we haven't even talked about Detroit when it comes to gospel. You know what I mean?
Detroit gospel is according to the Winans and the Jones Girls. And the Jones Girls' mother was a very outstanding gospel artist. And let us not forget, of course, Freddie Allen and all the other creative entities that come out of their gospel. Because Freddie Allen is Detroit. And Marvin Sapp is from that part of the hemisphere of Africa. And Freddie Allen... They talk about Freddie Allen. Freddie Allen was influential in actually mentoring and developing some of the artists that are hit makers today.
Okay.
So that's why I said we have to talk about creative baton change. Where people are trained, mentored directly or indirectly.
Wow.
And one thing that Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and Freddie Allen, they're not scared of bringing in people in to watch them, because they're interested in to expand. When you think about him producing Touch of the Angel, what a masterpiece soundtrack. He did that.
Okay.
I'm sort of jumping the gun, but I'm just giving the overall view. And I'm willing to go back and exploring Sound of Blackness because...
we
need to actually look at the musicians behind the sound who worked with Jimmy Jam, and also the ensemble of musicians that is part of the Sound of Blackness. They were excellent. Every time I think about Optimist, it has so much levels. It has so many levels of sonic excellence, different levels. You just take away the drums, you just leave the percussion beat, and it's a dancing. It dances and it bounces.
No, 100%, bro. It was an absolute powerhouse of a track, and I must admit, you had things like I remember a track. I'm just gonna try and find this up now. The track is called Pressure. I'm sure it's Pressure Part 1, Part 2. I can't remember which one was that. Was a hype on? Right. It was Pressure Part 2.
So yes, those singles. I think both of those singles sold in excess of probably 600,000 to 700,000, or maybe more. Actually, they were quite big sellers, runaway hits, and they're just total revolutionary. because
Bro, massive
it goes
things.
on forever. It
Yeah,
goes
yeah,
on
yeah.
forever.
No.
I am sorry that I didn't get a chance to go into detail. I wasn't too well, but I can get all. I think what we need to concentrate, if we do revisit it, is to look at the musician behind the sound. You know,
we're gonna revisit it. So we look at the musicality of it still. Yeah. So I'm gonna like I said, bro, really appreciate the time and really just giving us and this is what I'm saying. Success is not born from just an artist, somebody getting out of the bed and just rolling through the bed and just coming with a hit and that's it. And we so in the UK think that success happens within 24 months. Success can take 10 years to get there, and it's scary to hear success taking that long. It scares me going, God, do I have to? I've been on this for decades, you know what I mean? And is it just success? If I said to my younger self, it'll take decades, would I carry on this journey? But the reality show is the world, the life, everything says that it takes time. You know what I mean? And the best things take time.
Yes, that's right. You got to remember, the interesting thing about the US with some of the artists, some of the executives mentored these musicians from way back and decided that they want the ushers and so on to be hit makers. They decided, and so they invest in them and they became powerhouse creative entities. So sometimes, as I said, it might look, for instance, you need to remember that Mary J. Blige came out of Uptown Records, which is black label with the 411. There's so many black labels during the 90s. It's incredible. Wow. Absolutely incredible.
Wow. And that's hence why there can be movers and shakers at this time right now, and that's why you have massive black executives, billionaire, millionaire black owners, because they had to fight and they struggled and they developed and they built on their successes, and the successes there, guys, man, it's for us to look into the history, man. But listen, Kev, our time has done. Thanks again for your time, guys. We'll look back at Sounds of Blackness. I will hopefully play the right track right now, because I'm going to play the track which is, I need relief, from the pressures, absolute classic. I play this track 24/7 all the time. I just absolutely love it, man. But listen, Kev, thanks for jumping in for us, and listen, we'll go into detail of the foundation.
We're going to next week. We go into the old creative process. The stuff and the engineer, how things actually evolved.
Brilliant, bro. Okay. No, 100%, brother. Thanks again, bro, and thanks for jumping in through with us today, bro. And we're gonna hit this track. And guys, make sure that you like, subscribe, whatever you gotta do on YouTube when you watch this video. And make sure, on top of that, guys, you look at our other videos in the past, which is touched so many things, from Teddy Pendergrass. Yes, you heard it, Teddy Pendergrass. And we touched a bit about some of the is it Jason Poyser? I keep forgetting his name. You know what I mean?
James
Poyser. Names that you wouldn't realize have been powerhouses in black music over the years from Sheffield. You know what I'm saying? But here's a classic, guys. Bless you, Kev. Thanks again, man. You guys ready for the man? Peace and love, brother.
Visit us for updates and shows at affinityextra.co.uk.